today we are going to talk about this simple statement that be still and know that you are God. And this is, in fact, if we have to choose, now this statement comes from Bible, and today we are talking about the Bhagavad Gita is the subject, the satsang is on subject of Bhagavad Gita, but I will conclude with the Bhagavad Gita saying, and this will bring us closer to this saying or this wisdom that both the scriptures are actually talking about the same thing. So if we have to take one thing from the Bible, which is the essence of all the Vedas, as Ramana Maharishi said one time, he said that would be that be still and know that you are God. And all the religions and all the sages have been talking about it, but still it looks that we work hard to still our mind and we get success to varying degrees, but still somehow it looks difficult. And this is exactly what this great sage who was a Tamil poet, and he at one time he said, which is summing up this difficulty or this challenge, and he says that bliss will ensue if you keep still, but however much you tell your mind this truth, it will not keep still. It is the mind that tells the mind to be still, and it will attain bliss, but it will not do it. Though all the scriptures have said it, and though we hear it daily from the great ones and even from our Guru, we are never quiet but stray into the world of Maya and sense objects. That is why conscious, deliberate effort is needed to attain that effortless state of stillness. He writes further, indeed, until the supreme effortless state is attained, it is impossible for a man not to make effort. His own nature compels him to, just as Shri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita told Arjuna that his own nature would compel him to fight. Now, this is something which, friends, we have to understand, that it is the nature which, it is the gunas in the nature, as Krishna is saying to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. He said, even if you are not willing to fight this battle of life, the past tendencies, the gunas of the nature, your past latent sanskaras, they will still be active and they will kind of compel you to fight the battle of life. So you cannot hold, or you cannot say that I will not fight, or I will remain inactive, or I will not participate in this battle of life. He said even if you try, you won't be able to do it, because those latent tendencies, the momentum of those sanskaras that we have gained, that will somehow let us go continue, and it will not, and it will take us time to bring our mind to the complete stillness. And that is why the subject of yoga that we deal with, it is, if you see the first line in the scripture of yoga that Patanjali gave us, he said yoga is nothing but it's a science of chitta vritti nirodha, which is to say that it is the science and the art which helps us to still the mind, because vrittis are the eddies, and unless our mind is absolutely still, we will not be able to know who we are, we will not be able to get into our true nature, which is nothing but bliss. And that is why we were singing this chant that I am He. And yes, we were singing, theoretically we know that, but in order to realize that, all we have to do is to still the mind. And here, if you see, if we have to still the mind, then yoga comes and offers us the ways broadly in three categories. So the first thing in which Krishna also says is that the one yoga, which is the karma yoga, which can help us, is, he said, karma yoga is nothing but a desireless action. So if you begin your journey on that level, if you in your life, if you fight the battle of life, whatever role you are playing, if you just fight the battle, if you just continue without any desire, by what needs to be done, you do it. If you are a householder, if you are a banker, or if you are a doctor or an engineer, whatever role has been given to you, you just continue that, but perform it without creating any new desires and remaining unmindful of the fruits of action. He said that will purify your mind. And that is why there is another saying in the Bible which is equally, or you can say is kind of corollary of the first statement, where Christ is saying that blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So if you see stillness of the mind and purity of the heart, they are actually the same thing. And desireless action, when we do it, it helps us to purify our mind. The more we are able to purify, the more we are going towards the stillness, because the absolute purity, you may say, is that point where there is zero thought in the mind, and we will come to that when we will do this guided meditation also. The second thing which yoga science tells us is that yes, when you keep working like that, and sometimes it takes, he said, incarnations of desireless action will bring you to that point of purity of heart, where you start feeling the natural love of God, and that natural love of God takes you to that level where you become devoted, and where you want to give your heart's love to God, and that is nothing but devotional bhakti or bhakti yoga. And that devotion doesn't come to us till the point we absolutely surrender to God's will in our lives. And there's an interesting story which comes to my mind, where there was one visitor who was visiting Ramana Maharishi at one time, and he was asking him many questions, and Ramana could see that there are so many doubts in his mind. And before that, he had already said that these doubts will stay in your mind till you surrender completely. They are indicating that you have not fully surrendered to God's will. But then he felt that the visitor has not understood the point completely. So he said, let me ask you a question. And he says, okay, if somebody is traveling in the train, he says, if you are traveling, let's say in the train, where would you keep your luggage? And the visitor said, sir, I will keep my luggage either in the luggage compartment, or I'll keep it on the luggage rack or under my seat. He said, okay. But he said, would you keep that luggage in your lap or over your head? And the visitor said, sir, it would be foolish. Who would like to keep the luggage on the head if you are moving in the train or in your lap? He said, exactly, this is what I want to say. He said, if you are following a spiritual path, if you have come on the spiritual path, he said, it is 1,000 times more foolish than that man who is actually carrying the luggage on his head. If you think that in this life, when you have come on the spiritual path, if you still think that you have to handle all the worries of your life, that means you have not surrendered enough. And that is why that devotion will come naturally if you say that, God, I have already dedicated my life to you. Now imagine, and he said ultimately this, he had a long discussion with this visitor in his ashram, and he said, imagine, at that time the population of the world was probably 2 billion. He said, this universe or this world is having 2 billion people, but and God is carrying the burden. So you don't have to carry the burden. And then he also gave him another example. He said, in that temple which you saw, it's a big huge temple. Let us say you create two figures on one of the pillars, and you feel that those figures are actually carrying the whole burden of the temple. He said, it's not that. So ultimately, if you see, we have to come to a point when our heart is gaining purity by doing selfless actions, by doing desireless actions. Then there comes this point when we when we know that yes, God is much wiser than all of us put together, He is the creator, He is the master ordainer, then I don't have to worry because I have already given my whole life to God. Why should I worry? So, in that absolute surrender, you see, we become effortless. All our actions, whichever, it's not that you will not be doing anything, still you will do your duty, whatever needs to be done, but then you will always remain free of worries, and you will also come one step closer to God, because you although you still feel separate from God as a devotee and a God, but still you have taken one step closer, rather than that man who was not even devoted but who was just doing karma yoga with desireless actions. And finally we come to a point of jnana yoga, where and jnana yoga is something which we can practice through meditation much more quickly, because in our meditations what we do is, if you see, the main objective of the meditation is to silence the mind and to attain the stillness of the mind. So that is why we start with stilling our body by keeping our spine straight, because if the body is still, the message to the mind goes that yes, now mind also has to be still. But stilling the body is not like stilling the mind, all of us know that, but it always begins by stilling the body. And then when thoughts are going in all the directions, then we make use of the techniques that the yogis have offered us to focus at the point between the eyebrows, because this is the seat of the spirit, the seat of the willpower, the seat of the concentration, as Yogananda said. Or sometimes we also make use of other techniques which help us to concentrate the mind. But all these techniques are helpful. They are not the goal, but they are helpful to bring our mind to a point so that we can remain absolutely thought free and completely silence the mind. Because in that stillness, if you remember, Yogananda also said in that poem, he said, "Spotless is my mental sky, beneath, ahead, and high above." So that is the point we are trying to achieve, that in our mental space, which is infinite, which is actually in that space alone, everything is happening, but we are trying to keep it as absolutely silent, spotless, where no thought can even flicker. And that is only possible when we gain enough energy or enough control by doing the yoga practice, by devotedly, lovingly seeking God, that we can remain in that silence for long duration of time. And here this is very important, friends, because I think it's a kind of we need to befriend the silence, because I feel sometimes silence for many of us, especially those who have not practiced the spiritual teachings or the yoga techniques for long, it may be really scary for some of us. Silence can be fearful for many of us, but we need to befriend this silence. They say God speaks the language of silence, and yes, going to a solitary place may be helpful, but ultimately solitude is not external which we are trying to achieve, it is the internal solitude which we are trying to achieve. You may be in a crowded place, but if your mind is absolutely silent, you are living in solitude. Whereas another person who is living in a forest maybe, or in the mountains, in absolute external solitude, but if his mind is creating lot of noise there, then there is no solitude, and he will still be suffering. Because if you see, whatever sufferings are there in the world, or we feel we are suffering, whether on the physical plane or on the mental plane or emotional plane, ultimately all these sufferings will come to us through thoughts. Even the pain, when you say, oh, I am having backache, but that pain also you feel because there is a thought in your mind which tells you that yes, there is pain. If there is an emotional loss, let's say somebody has lost a loved one, still that loss or that feeling of loss will come to us through that thought. So if you can understand, if we can absolutely still our mind where there is no thought, then there can be no suffering. In fact, it won't be naive to say that a silent mind is a liberated mind. Now you can very well imagine that if, and this should become a habit, this should become a general attitude for all of us, not only in meditation but also in our day-to-day activities, that how, to what extent I can keep my mind absolutely silent. Now what will happen? If you see, when our mind is absolutely silent, then naturally you are not identifying with the world, because when the mind is silent, or when the mind is so silent that it is kind of dead, then there is no world for you. And this is exactly Yogananda said we practice during the sleep. He said every night God makes you feel, gives you this practice that when you sleep there is no world for you. Because what happens during the sleep? When you go to sleep, you forget the world, you forget who you are, you forget even your name, you forget even your body, you forget your personality, but still you are existing, because you are existing as a soul there, you are existing in your natural spirit form, and that is why it is so relaxing. But when we wake up in the morning, then we see the world and we see our body and we start identifying ourselves with the body and the world, and then Yogananda said that this is how you get entangled, this is how you start suffering. Although when you were not thinking about, when there were no thoughts of the world, when there were no thoughts of the body, you were in absolute bliss. But because that bliss was attained unconsciously to you, you do not retain that. So all you have to do is that you have to retain, you have to go into that state of mental silence consciously, and that is what we practice during meditation. So meditation is nothing but going into, you may say, active sleep or conscious sleep, where world is, you have already slept towards the world. Because when the mind is absolutely silent, then the world is dead for you. That is why even sleep is considered as a mini death, and same is even the meditation. Deep meditation is nothing but you are practicing death. That yes, when the world will be dead for me, when my mind is absolutely silent, then what is remaining? Because in that absolute silence, if you see, the world is not there for you, not even body is there for you, not even your personality, because in order to remember who you are in this limited role that you are playing, you need to remember your name, you need to remember your small role that you are playing. But if there are no thoughts in your mind, all you are left with is just this awareness that yes, I am aware of this silence. This is the last thought that will remain with you, no other thought. And this last thought also has to go, that yes, there is a complete vacuum, there is a complete silence, or as Buddha said, it is the state of no thingness or nirvana. But in that no thingness also, that awareness is there. It's not a complete vacuum, because there has to be somebody who is aware of this silence. And who is that? So that awareness, when you see, okay, I am aware of this silence in me, but what is that power which is sustaining and making me aware of this silence? Because that has to be some power which is making me aware of this silence. So finally, when we are able to hold on to this silence and we lovingly approach to that high reality, because if you see, that high consciousness is nothing but awareness. That is also one way to look at it. God is nothing but Satchidananda, ever existing or ever conscious and ever new bliss, as Yogananda defined. So that awareness, in that state, in deep silence of meditation, you become aware of the awareness, you may say. You become aware of the awareness which is impersonal, which is formless, which has no name. It is everywhere, and it is only for a short while that it has taken a form in you, or it is working through you, or it is working through the instruments of your body and mind, but you don't have to stay limited to that reality. Your internal, your actual reality, or your identification should be with that supreme awareness which is running this whole show, and it is same and it is universal everywhere. So if you see, those are the steps in which we are able to ultimately realize on our own level. And mind you, this whole exercise each one of us has to do individually. That is why our scriptures and sages can bring us to a point, but beyond that it is our self effort. We all have to understand it. And why should not it be, it should not be happening for us? Because the consciousness, the very awareness is the only reality with which our machinery is running. So it's like, we are having this awareness and still we are seeking the same awareness outside ourselves. Now that is the greatest joke of, and this is also the greatest mystery, that we have this awareness, the awareness is running the whole thing, and we are still seeking that self and still seeking that awareness outside ourselves. So finally I will come to the conclusion of this point, which is actually given in Bhagavad Gita, as I promised, that how we will conclude with the shloka from Bhagavad Gita, which is going to sum up this whole thing. And in the Bhagavad Gita, if you see, in the 3rd chapter, Krishna is saying, offer to me your every deed, devoid of egoism and desire, inwardly centered in the soul, ever calm and free from worries, be dutifully engaged in the battle of life. And this is something, I'll just explain what we have just discussed. And he said, true devotees focused on practicing my precepts and the true teachings achieve freedom from all karma. And how do we attain that freedom? Here again Krishna is saying, when you offer all the deeds to God, when you are absolutely desireless, devoid of the desire, that is what is karma yoga, and inwardly centered in the soul. Because when we practice jnana yoga, when we understand that all this is coming from that substratum of consciousness, that substratum of awareness, which is impersonal and universal, but for a very short period it has taken a personal individual role through each one of us, but that limited role is not our true reality. So the more you rest in that state, he said, and free from worries, that is what is bhakti yoga all about, because you have given your whole life to God. You don't have to carry the whole luggage on your head, because train is anyways moving. You don't have to carry the luggage on your head, or whatever luggage of worries you are carrying. And then he said, be dutifully engaged in the battle of life. So this is the picture, or this is exactly what a yogi or a devotee has to live, and this will take you to freedom. He said, and all your karma will be taken care of. You don't have to do anything beyond this. And it also brings me to again a point which comes up in Autobiography of a Yogi, because if the stillness of the mind is to be attained, and we saw that how these 3 paths of yoga, and which help us to attain that stillness of the mind. But there is one important element, I think, which is very, very important here, apart from these 3 things, and that is the craving for God. That is like intensely desiring God, and that nobody can give us. So I want you, all of you, to do this homework when you go, and we can do it now also. That just ask yourself, what is it that you want from this world? Because if you want something from this world, to that degree, God will stay away from you. Because till you want something from this world, naturally you won't be having that intense desire for God. Because when all your desires have, or you have realized that there is nothing this world can give me, or you have all your natural, all your latent tendencies and sanskaras have exhausted themselves, and you have come to that point that I don't want anything from this world and I want God alone, and you want God intensely, then Yogananda said that that intense craving will pull God towards yourself. And I want to quote here his words. He said, and he's talking about the state of bliss, the state of samadhi, he said, it comes with a natural even inevitability to a sincere devotee. And who is a sincere devotee? He says, his intense craving begins to pull at the God with an irresistible force. The Lord, as the cosmic vision, is drawn by the seeker's magnetic ardor into his range of consciousness. So it is your desire, intense desire, and he uses the word craving for God, which will pull the God towards you. And till that point, I think we will all be struggling to variable degrees, and also kind of feeling that why God is delaying to come to me. I think we just have to come to that point that we can crave God to that degree. So let's take this wisdom of Gita, Bhagavad Gita, into our short meditation to conclude this satsang, and try to just introspect on these facts. First of all, just evaluate your heart, that what is it that you want from this world. And if you truly desire God, if you truly have enough craving for God, then make him the pole star of your life. And as we do in our meditation, we lift up our gaze. We look through the point between the eyebrows into the distant sky. As Yogananda said, that spotless is my mind, beneath, ahead, and high above. So as you are gazing into the mental sky, through the point between the eyebrows, feel the silence of your own mind, because that is our natural state. You will find that as you keep your body still, as you keep your gaze still, and you look through the point between the eyebrows, you will be able to gain that stillness of the mind naturally. And if you become aware of some clouds of thoughts that start appearing in your mental sky, then remember what Yogananda has told us, that these thoughts do not belong to you. They are universally rooted. They are not individually rooted. Let them pass like floating clouds. You don't have to go with them. All you have to identify with is that spotless mental sky, vast and infinite. Feel that the sky is your reality, untouched, absolutely pure, without any quality. And as you feel your mind expanding in all the directions into the vast spaces, you will naturally attain the silence and the stillness. Which is our natural state. Befriend this silence, because this is who we are. In this moment, there is no world that exists for us. The world is already dead for us. There is no limited role that you are playing. You have no form, you have no name. All you know is this absolute silence. And in this effortless silence, just become aware of this awareness, because that awareness is sustaining you. That universal awareness is making you aware of this silence, and that is what is the substratum of this universe. That silent awareness, that formless awareness, that impersonal awareness, which is universal, is the only reality. And everything has come from it. And when we hold on to this silence and learn to identify with this universal awareness, then there is no suffering. And we have already attained what needs to be attained, and all we have to do is improve in degrees, as Yogananda said, by deeper practice.